How's everyone doing? All right, yeah. So I'm Dean. This is my panel about CRT TVs and using them in 2025. Yeah. So a brief overview of what we'll talk about is what a CRT is, why you might use one in the current year. Also, the difference between a regular CRT and a PVM, which are on the stage here. How to acquire CRTs, as well as the RGB format, which was not a standard format in America for analog video. And then at the end, we'll do questions. So hold your questions for the end if you can. And then at the end, you'll be able to come up and view the screens for yourself. So I'm not an expert. I'm not an electrical engineer or like a industry insider or anything. I'm just a guy who's passionate about the technology. I started collecting these things during lockdown in 2020. I currently own 6 of them, pictured here. 5 PVMs of different sizes and one normal CRT TV. You can ignore the cry for help there in the corner, but yeah. Can someone turn down I can hear that. Can someone turn the volume off? Okay. Thanks. All right, so anyone in the room born like 2004, 2005-ish? No, not you, Chris. Or you. Nobody? Okay. No children in the audience or anything? Okay. I was trying to gauge if anyone here is not even like unfamiliar with this technology at all, but it doesn't seem the case. So I can skip this slide. Yeah. So the cathode ray tube CRT television was basically the only kind of television you could get for 70 years or so. There was such a thing as a mechanical TV before CRTs, but they weren't very popular. It was kind of just experimental, so not going to talk about that. Yeah, from the 1930s up until like the late 90s, early 2000s, if you were going to get a TV, you were going to get a CRT. And then in the 90s, early 2000s, like plasma screens or LCD screens started to come out, and these are just more convenient because they're not 100 pounds and take up a ton of room. So even when the picture wasn't as good, people were buying them anyway for the convenience of it. So yeah, you can see in this Google Trends graph around 2007-ish is when CRTs kind of start to fall out of favor. The interest starts to go down. But you can see I was not the only one who found this during the pandemic. Around 2020, the interest starts to go back up. And now the CRT Collective Facebook page has over 200,000 members, as well as the CRT Gaming subreddit has over 120,000 members. So I'm going to try to explain how CRT works. These things are kind of magic boxes, very complicated machines, but I'll try my best. This in this picture is a vacuum tube. So just imagine like a light bulb that's a glass tube with no air in it. And then specifically, this is a diode, which only allows for electricity to flow in one direction. You can see that arrow. So the heating element will heat the cathode, which will allow electrons to jump to the anode. And that completes its circuit. However, if you replace the anode with a ring and just allow the electrons to shoot right through it, that's what's called an electron gun. And then when those electrons hit a phosphorus coating on the glass, that is how it fluorescently glows. In this picture, you would have a single point of light on the screen, just with one electron gun. We're talking about like a black and white TV here. And then if you bring some magnets in here. Yeah, I did this presentation in Office 2000, by the way, for period accuracy. But that's that's the only animation. You won't have to worry about any more animation. So yeah, imagine magnets surrounding this electron beam, and that if you control those electromagnets, you can bend this beam into different directions, and that's basically how you're drawing the picture. And that's for black and white TVs. Now, if you take 3 electron guns and reserve them for 3 colors, red, green, and blue, as well as painting different color phosphors onto the glass for those red, green, and blue colors, and shoot those beams through what's called a shadow mask. So you're only allowing certain colors to hit at certain times. That's how you get a color image. So the shadow mask is basically like this metal screen behind the glass that blocks whatever colors you don't want to display. The ones on the left are more for TVs, like normal televisions, whereas the one on the right was more common for computer monitors. Just different ways the picture looks. So that electron beam is kind of going in horizontal lines. It starts from the top left corner and then goes to the right and then goes back to the left and down and does that 60 times a second all the way down the screen. That's 60 hertz. So you can see in that picture there's kind of like color lines and then like black lines. And that's the separation of where the gun is drawing the picture and where it's not. And that's what's called scan lines or TV lines. There's interlacing as well, which kind of swaps between where the black and the color lines are and kind of flashes back and forth to draw a denser picture. So like that's the difference between 480i and 240p. That's more common for 3D stuff or movies, and you can see that flashing. The amount of lines you'll see on the screen varies depending on how big the TV is or how many they just wanted to put, depending on how nice they wanted the picture to look or certain circumstances, whatever. There was also the Sony Trinitron. This is patented technology. The shadow mask is replaced with an aperture grill. So this is only, instead of like these kind of sort of dot patterns you have, or these like pseudo pixels, it's just vertical lines. And that allowed for a better picture because there's just less metal in the way. So you can see in this picture, the top one is like a normal TV and the bottom one's a Trinitron. So there's just better colors, a more clear picture. This technology allowed Sony to dominate the TV market in the 80s and 90s. At some points, they had up to 50% market share. Another thing they dominated is the professional space for TVs. They had the PVMs and BVMs, which stands for professional video monitors and broadcast video monitors, which are 2 of them on the stage here. They're used in professional settings, or were used. Hospitals were a common one for like doing surgery or whatever. Video production, TV and film studios used it for mastering their movies or whatever. These were typically higher quality, very expensive, more TV lines, better electronics for just better pictures, as well as allowing for the RGB input format, which is the clearest, highest fidelity kind of video signal that ever existed. But they are less user-friendly because they were for professionals, especially the BVMs, which are very confusing to use. And those are a lot rarer. you can see in this picture, that's a high definition CRT, which is very interesting. They can do 1080i in widescreen. But yeah. So some of the advantages that CRTs have over something like an LCD screen, no input lag. And technically there is some, but it is nanoseconds. It's imperceivable by humans, versus about 10 to 20 milliseconds on your typical TV nowadays. This is important for things like fighting games or maybe rhythm games where you need, like, if you're really good and you need to be exact with your inputs, then you can, like, if you're really good, you can notice. I'm not that good, but as well as they do have high contrast ratio, very bright colors. Now, I mean, there's nice LED TVs today that can have contrast ratios in the millions, but compared to some TVs, they still have better contrast ratios. There's the scan lines, which I was talking about earlier. It changes how the picture looks, compared to if you were just to pull up a game on an emulator on a computer, or just plug in your GameCube to your TV that you have now. When the developers were making these games back in the day, they were designing them on CRTs and intended them to be seen on CRTs. So you can see a difference. The next slide will hopefully demonstrate this, but especially in 2D games, that pixel art really looks a lot different on these things versus like just plugging it into a LCD screen. There's also the topic of motion clarity. This is something that TVs nowadays still can't really get right. So imagine like something's moving on the screen. It'll be blurry if you're just looking at the whole thing, but if you focus in on something that's moving and try to like focus on that one thing moving, on a lot of TVs nowadays it'll still be blurry, but on a CRT that you'll see every pixel, even when it's moving really fast across the screen. I don't have a demonstration of that. I couldn't get video to work on this thing, but there's also light guns. Downstairs there's a light gun alley in the game room. If you haven't seen that, because the response time is so fast on these, it's the only way to get the way those light guns were designed to work. So you can't really get them to work on LCDs very well. So if you want to play a light gun game, it's really your only option. And there's the nostalgia factor, which nothing wrong with that. And a big one is if you don't get one of these, they're going in the dump, pretty much. That's where most of them are currently. These things, because the electron gun is shooting a radioactive beam, the glass has lead in it, so to protect you from the radiation. So if that thing is thrown in the dump and broken into a million pieces, the lead is now in the ground. So you're saving the environment by getting these things, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, that's where most of them are. That's where most of them are still going. There was a lot of them. Yeah. So yeah, this is what I was talking about. Maybe a lot of you have already seen this picture. But this is from Castlevania. This is Dracula. On the left is what it would look like if you just plugged your PS1 into your TV, like a LCD screen versus a CRT. You can see how the scan lines really cut up the image and kind of like bring in the illusion of detail. Or those red beady eyes on the left kind of disappear and look normal. And like there's a lot more like detail in like the hair and like the clothes and stuff. So this is a major reason that people are still picking these things up. Is emulators do have these like scan lines, but it's a lot different. I think the real thing is better. So I want to talk about some of the input formats that were available for analog video. The first one is RF, which stands for radio frequency. This is one single cable that both the audio and video are passing through. And then it goes through the TV's radio tuner, which all that compounded makes it the worst option that was ever available. But sometimes it was the only option. For older TVs, this was the only input for just satellite TV. Or this is more common on like older consoles as well, like Ataris or NES. They came with these adapters for this little box. But this was the most common option, composite. Has anyone not seen this before? All right. So yeah, the red, the white, and the yellow being the video, the other two being the audio. Most consoles came with this thing. Use RCA connectors. But the video is still on one cable, which does lead to some interference in the video. I'll have a slide here that'll kind of compare what these inputs look like in terms of like the clarity of the image. So there was also S-video, which further separates the video signal into two wires, one of them being luminance, which kind of is like the brightness of the signal, as well as chrominance, which is the color information. There's a lot of math involved that I don't fully understand, but I'll talk about it more on the next slide. This was not as common as composite. You could get S-video connectors for some consoles, but you had to get it separately usually. It was more common for, I believe, like camcorders, plugging in those into your TV and watch your family home videos or whatever. Yeah, and this is just a video only input. The audios you got to figure out separately. So there was component. YPBPR is also what it's called. This separates the video into three cables, Y, PB, and PR. So there's a red one, a blue one, and a green one, but this is not RGB. The Y is luma, which is, again, the brightness is calculated in that formula from the RGB values. And then the blue and red values are subtracted from that. It's very complicated. Like I said, I don't really get it, but it represents this color space that is a very high fidelity input format. Very comparable to RGB. Hard to tell the difference. Also uses RCA connectors, so don't get it confused with your composite inputs. Also usually has the audio part with it as two more cables, another red one and a white one. And this came with a lot of the later consoles, like your Xbox 360 or whatever. So yeah, here's RGB. This is what I'm using on these TVs right now. So this is the highest fidelity option. It pretty much is just telling the electron guns how to shoot its beams onto the phosphors. So it's got the red, the green, the blue strengths, and then the synchronization in between them horizontally and vertically. Those syncs are often combined. Is what's called composite sync. And that format's also called RGBS. That's what I've got going on here. It uses these PVMs use BNC connectors, which are kind of like coaxial connectors, but they have this like spring-loaded thing that locks onto the back, so they don't fall off. So yeah, there was also SCART. This was more common in Europe. It's another RGB format. Europe was very lucky to have a at-home RGB format. It's also carried audio. I've also got one sitting up. I have it converted up here, so you can see it if you want. But it's common in the hobby just because it's this big fat connector that's easy to crack open and solder your own cables up. But otherwise was not found outside of Europe. So this is the difference between those inputs. As you can see in the RF and composite, there's a lot of bloom in the bright colors, or like the white, and there's a lot of interference between them, just because all that video signal is being pushed through one cable. And then you start to see some improvements in S-video, and then when you're all the way down to RGB, you can really see the full colors, the precise pixels, not a lot of interference between them. If this was a video as well, on those lower signals, you would see a lot of like wobbling as well from that interference, whereas RGB is completely still. So, if you want to find one of these, I think the easiest places are Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. Definitely something local. You can look on eBay. eBay has local pickup options sometimes, but these things are very hard to ship. They're so big and heavy. So I would look locally. Facebook, Craigslist, good options, as well as like some apps like OfferUp or 5 Miles or some big ones. There seems to be like a different app, all the time. So I would just use whatever's trending, try to find something that no one else is looking at, because there is a lot of interest. For PVMs, it's harder because those are all, in warehouses somewhere if they still exist. So I would look at like business closing auctions. That's where I've got some of mine, like video production studios that are closing down. One of mine is from a hospital that was used for surgery, and now it just sits in my basement. So if you're really brave, you can call places, see if they got anything lying around. Just ask them, like, "Oh, take it off your hands," if you got stuff sitting around. But probably a lot of people have done that already, probably. But they're still out there. When I was looking for these things, no one really knows what to call these things. Like I said, this was the only kind of TV at one point, so people just called it a TV, or now people call them like big TVs or like tube TVs or like wide body TVs. I've seen all kinds of weird names for these things. So yeah, when I was looking in peak desperation, I was just searching TV. That's it. And I would just scroll past all the flat screens, and looking for the rare, nice stuff, that people were just giving away. Because the real nice ones, if people know what they got, they want money, So if you want to find the hidden gems, I would suggest being as broad as possible, and just being patient. But luckily, because of survivorship bias, basically, if you find something, it most likely will still work or will be easily fixable, unless it's burnt in. There's no fixing that. If it's used for the same picture over like for way too long, the screen will burn in, and you'll be able to see like an after image permanently. There's unfortunately no way to fix that. In this picture is the largest CRT ever made, the PVM 4300. It's a 43-inch screen. It's, I don't even know, it's humongous. This was thought to be missing from the world. There was no known like owners of this thing, but a couple months ago, someone uploaded a YouTube video where they found one and got it shipped to their house. It's a very interesting video, so I recommend on YouTube just looking up largest CRT. I imagine it'll come up. What was it? Yeah, it was at a sushi place in Osaka, I think. Yeah. What's the name? Shank Mods is the YouTuber. Yeah, very interesting video. I recommend looking that up. Yeah, 450 pounds. Yeah. Yeah. So these are some high-end models to look for. Like I said, if people know what they got, they want to charge you money, possibly hundreds of dollars. But if you got a keen eye, you might be able to spot these on someone who's just giving it away. Um, I think any Trinitron will be good, but the FV, the FS, and XBRs were known as some of the best ones that Sony ever made. A lot of these were flat screen CRTs, which is interesting, and they were more at the tail end of CRT production, like early 2000s. So they just had the time to figure out how to make these things look the best, just from decades of experience making them. Very clean signals, native component input, as well as really nice speaker systems. Like the one in this picture has a subwoofer in it. It sounds really good. That's the FV310, which a lot of people consider to be the best looking consumer CRT ever made. And bonus points if you can find it with the matching stand. Very nice. But JVC and Toshiba are also considered to be some of the more high-end CRTs that were ever made. But like I said, anything will work. It's better than your house than the dump. Here's some weird, rare ones to look for as well. If you're a fan of interior design, the Bang & Olufsen TVs were very interesting looking. Also very hard to find. They were, fancy, expensive TVs. Not necessarily the best picture, but the most interesting looking. Very like 80s postmodern type of vibe. It's also the Samsung GX, which was like this gaming monitor that had this crazy speaker system in it that like folded up on the screen. And then there's the JVC Videosphere, which has this spherical screen. I believe this is a black and white TV, and it looks like this, like a space helmet. Very cool. It's also TVs that were designed for prisons. These were completely clear so that no one could hide contraband inside them. So yeah, completely clear. You can see all the guts inside. Really cool. Also really hard to find. And then there's the CRT projector, which is this huge projector the size of like an air hockey table. It's humongous. It's got these 3 glass bulbs, a red one, a green one, a blue one. And you can project those scan lines onto hundreds of inches, however big you got, and get that CRT picture from a humongous, however big you want screen. But yeah, those are hard to find as well, and very unwieldy. You got one, I don't know where you're gonna put it. I don't know what this is. It's very disturbing, but these, you can buy one of these on eBay for like $800 if you want, but I don't know why they're so much. The people want, I don't know. So after you get one of these things, like I said, very heavy. These are cubes, so they're subject to the square cube law, where dimensionally, as your screen size gets bigger in one direction, your volume is gonna go exponentially bigger. And made of lead, very heavy. So I would plan accordingly. If you're bringing this up to the 4th floor, get help. Bring it. Don't think you can do it yourself before you break your back or whatever. And then I would find a manual online just to get familiar with it. Also to figure out what the remote control's like, so you can get one of those. The remote control's good if it didn't come with one, because you can use that to get to the settings menu, where you can adjust things like the color settings or the geometry. It might not be perfect right when you get it, but you can fix it usually. Things like the linearity in this picture, which is kind of like if you were drawing just vertical or horizontal lines, if making sure they're equally spaced so there's not any warping, as well as just making sure the picture's centered. There's no like pin cushion shape to it, making sure it's nice and square, and then making sure all the colors are all stacked on top of each other. It's called convergence. There is a software called 240p Test Suite that'll help you kind of diagnose these issues. It's available for many platforms, all kinds of ROMs for different consoles, whatever is more convenient for you. as well as like homebrew versions. Like I use it on my Wii, that's got the homebrew channel on it. Yeah, like I said, whatever's more convenient. There's a lot of options. Now, if you get something with RGB input like a PVM or a nice CRT with component input, most consoles will support one or the other. All Sega systems, as well as the first 3 PlayStations and the original SNES, all have native RGB output. The GameCube, the Wii, the Xbox, PS2, PS3 have component options. But if you want to do your NES, your SNES Mini, like the smaller one that's kind of more rounded than the original, or the N64, you will have to mod your system to get RGB out of it. Otherwise, you're stuck with composite or S-video. It's not that bad to do this, especially if you get some of the ones on the right. The ones on the left are a little harder, but they have more settings and options you can turn on and off. The ones on the left are for the NES on the top and then the N64 on the bottom. So you crack open your Nintendo, you solder these things in, run some wires, and you get the right cable, and it'll output RGB. Yeah, so like you can kind of see on the right, like those little holes at the top, you would just kind of slot this onto the output pins, and then on the bottom there's some pads for some wires that you run. It's not too hard. I did it myself. The N64 one is a little harder because the wires are smaller, but not too bad. It is also possible to RGB mod your TV if you want to. However, I don't recommend this. It's very, very, very dangerous. I'm going to play a video. Hopefully it works. Yeah, like this. Oh, it's on this flash drive. This is a ThinkPad T22. Does this still work? No, it's not going to work. Okay. I forgot the video's on this flash drive, but I only got one USB 1.0, so I can't play it. But there's this video here of Bjork showing us her TV, talking about how beautiful it is. Ignore this driver. Oh, shit. All right, we're going to skip. Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. While we're at it. Right here? All right. What, this? Did you get rid of it? Yeah. Yeah, it was very nice. How much was it when you bought it? Yeah. Yeah, someone in the audience said they had one of these back in the day. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I know, like, yeah, you would go over, like, your friend's house and you would see one of these, like, you knew they had money, you know. Like, they had the nice TV. Yeah, most of them are, destroyed now. It's very sad, but... anyway, yeah, so in that video, Bjork is showing us the inside of her Trinitron, like saying how it looks like a beautiful city or whatever, and she's touching everything inside. It's very dangerous. You would if you touched the wrong thing, you would be dead before you hit the floor. Like if it was recently plugged in, there's a lot of voltage still in there. So I'm not going to tell you how to do this. I'm just going to tell you it's possible. Don't do it. Don't bother unless you know what you're doing. If your TV's got component input, like I said, component is very similar to RGB. It's not worth the risk to do this. I tried it. I almost died. So I destroyed a very nice TV. So yeah. I haven't seen an explosion, but yeah, these tubes are vacuum tubes again. So if they're like, if anything goes really bad, they could explode because the pressure would implode the tube. But yeah, when I screwed up my TV, it just made a loud pop and died. No picture anymore. Basically, I forgot to plug in a grounding strap, and it jumped onto something. I don't know what, but I couldn't figure out how to fix it. So yeah, another option you have, you can take your modern consoles and downscale them on the CRTs if you really want to feel creative. So in this picture, someone's playing Cuphead on a 60s Magnavox TV. With the rabbit ears and everything. So you can do this with either a weird series of adapters or something called a scan converter, which converts the signal on the fly to a different resolution. They're very expensive, but you get a lot more clean signal out of it than weird adapters from Amazon or eBay. Yeah. In conclusion, I think CRTs still have a place in gaming. There's still a growing interest in using them. They're getting harder to find, I think, at least for free. And I say why not, personally. Like I said, the only downsides is that they're big, heavy, and take up a lot of space. But otherwise, they're a nice option for retro gaming, especially 2D games. So yeah, now I'll open up for questions. Yeah.
So, I mean, in the day you get rid of those things because either the picture tube will go soft or the high voltage section will go.
Mm-hmm.
Bother fixing them anymore. How long do you find them that they're still nice and bright?
Yeah. So the question was that back in the day, a lot of people got rid of these because the picture was starting to go bad. Like the picture was starting to get blurry or start to get less bright. And the question was, how often are they like that? That is the case sometimes. Some of that is fixable, by changing some of the settings. Like you can turn up the brightness, or you can mess with the convergence, or even get in there and like turn the yoke around to really aim the guns better. But sometimes you might need to do things like replace the capacitors to get a brighter, stronger signal, because the capacitors are basically like batteries, where they have a lifespan. They go bad, sometimes even explode, and that's probably the most common thing that you have to do is replace the capacitors. But like I said, these things are pretty robust. Most of the time, it is fixable. Yeah, did that answer the question? All right.
So I heard that like a cathode ray tubes, they've like completely ceased production, and so like there's no major company making any new ones. So you think they'll like ever go extinct one day, or at least the price for them will go insanely high.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question was, they believe that there's no more cathode ray tube production, and that is true. No one is making their cathode ray tubes, new ones, anymore. All the factories are gone. If you buy a new one from China, it's probably made out of scraps. I think you can maybe get one from imported from China, but it's not new. So yeah, one day, unless for some reason some eccentric billionaire wants to reopen a CRT factory, these will go extinct one day. Like I said, they are robust, but the screens do have a lifespan. Eventually, like maybe the phosphors will fall off the glass, or the glass will break, or lose the vacuum, or get burnt in. One day there won't be CRTs, and that's just how it is, I guess. There isn't, unfortunately, very many reasons to bring them back. Yeah. Over here.
So what are your thoughts, if any, on the emulation of scan lines? Is that a good way to do that in a modern display?
Yeah. The question is about emulating scan lines. A lot of emulators do have, or for older consoles, come with like scan line emulation where it'll just like cut out some of the pixels, or like put a like a filter over it or a shader to make it look like it was on a CRT, and that is a good option if you don't feel like getting one of these. There's also something that just came out, a CRT simulator. I've only just found out about this, but there's like it's made by Blurbusters, which is like that website you go to where it's got the UFO and you like test your refresh rate. Yes, they made what? Blurbusters. So they made a CRT simulator very recently, and that's supposed to change how your normal computer monitor, like LCD monitor, works, so that it simulates how a CRT would show like that motion clarity I was talking about. It's very interesting. I haven't tried it, but that's something that just came out. So I would look into that. Yeah. Yeah. So the question was, they have a Zenith, which was very common, like lower budget TV back in the day. You find a lot of Zeniths at like thrift stores and stuff. But the question was, they had like discoloration in the corners. That is fixable. Usually that's like a magnetization issue. If the TV has a degauss setting, it might clear that up. The colors in the corners usually because of just like it got magnetized or something, and it sort of changed how the beam is hitting. And you can fix that. If it doesn't have a degauss setting, you might need to do some weird stuff and get like a degaussing tool. It could also be some stuff with like just how it has aged, and there's like these little tiny magnets you can put in the back to like change how it magnetizes normally, but that's more complicated. But I think it probably is fixable. I would do some research on that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Two BVMs. Mm. Oh, yeah, I don't know anywhere that can repair stuff, unfortunately. I wish I knew. Yeah, there's definitely people that do it. Yeah, you might have to like ship it to them if it's like some guy on the internet. But yeah, there's definitely people that do it and charge you money for it. Yeah, either someone who's super into it or they did it for a living back in the day. Yeah, I don't know anyone personally. Though. Oh. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. I think there's a lot of stuff trying to emulate CRTs, but I still no one's been able to perfect it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, over here. So you're converting your laptop screen onto the CRT screen? Yeah. I don't know. I think would it be possible to like make your laptop run in 4x3 maybe, or like? Oh, yeah. I would maybe look into a scan converter then. RetroTink makes one. I think it's like $400, but yeah. it's very nice, and you can either go from 240p to 1080p or 1080p to 240p. It's like it's got all kinds of wacky options. It's there's open source options as well. There's the open source scan converter. That might be the cheaper option. I think they're still expensive though. They're yeah. Mm-hmm. Let me go back here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's a good point. He was talking about how if you wanted it to look like how it looked, to you back in the day, you might want to use like something like composite input for that, like that blurry kind of shaky effect that it has from that interference. Just for nostalgia reasons. Something like these PVMs are very like with the RGB signals, very bright, and very very clean looking. It all like on the one on the right, this is a high resolution monitor that has more TV lines than the one on the left. So if you come up and look, you'll be able to see like the picture on the right is a lot more dense. It almost looks like just like a really nice flat panel LCD screen. So yeah, you might want to not do this if you think it's way too clean. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. It's up to you, however you want to do it. Yeah. Right behind. Yeah.
Yeah, how about high refresh rates? Do you go above 60?
I don't go above 60 hertz. I only have TVs. But yeah, some computer monitor CRTs, you can do some crazy refresh rates like in the 200s or it's like you either choose the refresh rate or the resolution. You can get some really wacky resolutions on CRT computer monitors too. Like in the 10,000s or whatever. Depending on certain ones, it's weird, but yeah, I only do TVs, so yeah, just 60 hertz for me. Yeah. I'll go back to that slide. Computer monitors typically had this delta pattern is what it's called in its shadow mask. It's the one on the right. So it had little dots in red, blue, and green to make the picture instead of a TV where it had these bars. So that picture is a lot more dense because you can fit a lot more dots than rectangles. And it's in like a triangle shape basically. It's I would say it's not really a one-to-one replacement. For one, a lot of CRT computer monitors just have VGA, and it's like hardwired into the back of it. So that's your only option is a VGA, and you have to get like a special converter for that. But they do have good picture. They still have the same benefits of like the brightness of the picture and that retro feel. But I think the effect is stronger on TVs because that really cut up shadow mask in those rectangles does affect the picture a lot more than the tiny dots. Yeah. Any more questions? A lot.
So I have a Trentron WEGA
Okay.
that I love, but on the very last move, it got scratching the screen.
Oh.
Do you have like any? I'm scared to try anything without having it. Do you know of any restoration that works well?
Is it like a plastic covering on the glass that got scratched, or is it the glass?
I think it's glass.
Oh, I have no idea. That stuff. Yeah. He said he has a WEGA Trinitron. A lot of the WEGAs were at the very end. Some of those are HD as well. You have to be careful with those if you're looking for the refresh rate, because some of the WEGAs have like these special signal converters that do add input lag. If anyone finds a WEGA, but they're still really nice. Yeah, and some of them do 1080i. So yeah. This guy in the back. One of the problems with converting is this is analog video, and then other things have digital video. So in order to convert from digital to analog or vice versa, you need like power sources and special components to do that. Oh. Oh, burn-in? Oh, why is burn-in irreversible? Oh, okay, sorry, I misheard you. Yeah, burn-in is irreversible because you basically like ruined the phosphors on the screen. They'll just permanently glow when there's any light near them. So the only way to fix that would be replace the tube, because you can't crack these things open and paint phosphor on it. So yeah, there's not much you can do about it. Yeah, that's just how they work, unfortunately. Oh, I thought you said why was converting signals difficult? And I was talking about how this is analog technology, and then a lot of consoles are digital, and you have to convert digital to video to analog video, and that's complicated. Yeah. You here? Yeah.
Do you have any tips to prolong the lifespan of a CRT device?
Yeah. So in order to prolong the lifespan, I would not try to burn it in. The way burn-in happens is like if you have the same thing on the screen for a very long time, like I have right now. I mean, it takes a while. It takes like months. If it was on for months, so I would turn it off when you're done with it, and that would be the best way, as well as just keeping it safe. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, as long as your screensaver isn't drawing the same things in the same spots, I think it would be fine. Not really. I mean, they can get hot, but I don't think they get so hot that they damage themselves. The thing that will happen is they'll start to smell weird because they're really dusty, and a lot of them have like nicotine like caked onto them from like being in houses where people smoked. So sometimes when they get hot, they just smell bad, but it should be fine. I don't think they usually overheat. Yeah. Yeah, is your hand on? Yeah.
What are some of your favorite games of all time to play on CRTs?
I really like playing Mega Man on these. I have Mega Man X on the screen. Like I said, these are really good for 2D games. 3D games do look really good on a CRT, but it's the impact is less noticeable because there's a lot of moving around. Whereas instead of like this very static pixel art, yeah, I like 2D games like platformers, like Mega Man. Castlevania was another one I had. Yeah, those kind of games. Yeah. I got these RGB cables on eBay. They're just RGB sync BNC cables. So I buy these on eBay, and then I had some SCART cables because I was originally going to do SCART on that TV I destroyed. I just cut these things in half and then put the SCART on the other end to solder it up, and then just plug it in. The cables are easy to either get. There's a website, RGB cables, I think it might just be called. Oh, it's some British website. Yeah, that one. Retrogaming.co.uk. They make some nice RGB cables. Or they make all kinds of cables for different consoles and situations. That's where I've gotten stuff. Yeah. I got 5 minutes. Any more questions? Yeah. It's just down to how fast it draws the picture, and that response time. There's with no input lag, that it just draws the image so fast that it has no time to get blurry. It's yeah. Yep. Oh, like some games that come out like a re-release where they make it look like a CRT. You have any like specific examples? Oh yeah, the Mega Man Legacy collections. Yeah, they had I think they had options in the settings where you could like turn on like the sprite flashing. That's another thing that CRTs have is the sprite flashing thing. Yeah, it was an NES thing where like the NES was not capable of drawing the same sprites a lot. But when those sprites flash, it does look better on a CRT because of that response time. It doesn't look as weird as if you plug your NES into a LCD. If that answers your question, that might be off topic, but all right. Yeah, so this box on top is an Extron matrix switcher. It has 8 inputs and 4 outputs, and I can do any combination of those. So I could have 2 consoles up here and have one on the left and one on the right, or right now I have the PS2 plugged in, and then just duplicated on both. And yeah, 4 outputs, so I can have four CRTs running the same thing at the same time. Yeah. This like $50 on eBay if you're lucky, maybe 100. Yeah. In the back. Yeah, in the back. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I don't think there's anything that's like so bad that you would need to avoid it. Usually the lowest quality TVs are the ones with VHS decks in them. Like yeah, they're VCRs or whatever it's called. Yeah, the TVs with VCRs in them are usually like the bottom of the barrel TVs, like the lowest quality. Don't feel bad if you have one. I mean, they were just very common, you know. But a radio, yeah.
I got this TV, it had a radio built in, I hooked it up to my laptop, and I just like, it's just gonna become sentient one day and probably.
Yeah. Yeah, but usually the TVs that have other stuff in them are not the best. But yeah, like I said, anything is good in my opinion. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just have a real a quick tip in Virginia at least it costs $25 to recycle TV.
Oh, you have to pay to recycle it?
Yeah, you have to
No.
pay them.
That's weird.
If you go to say a Best Buy, they have a recycling program, so that may be somewhere that you could potentially work to get the TV.
Oh.
Really bad.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and not accept them at the dump. You have to keep a license to get them. So this is something to keep.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So apparently Best Buy does recycling, and you might want to vulture there. Apparently in Virginia you have to pay to recycle CRTs, and that's unfortunate. But North Carolina too. In Maryland you don't. I go to my dump in Maryland, and I mean there's a big sign that says no scavenging, but it seems like every time I go to the dump there's TVs lying there. So maybe if you don't get caught, but all right, any more questions? All right, well, feel free to come up and look. Like I said, the main thing I want you to see is the difference between the TV lines on these two. The one on the right's more high resolution. So, yeah, thank you.